We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Amar Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 137a. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas amuroim between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, whether Kinyan Peiros is Kekinyan Haguf or not Kekinyan Haguf. Rabbi Yochanan says Kinyan Peiros is Kekinyan Haguf, and Reish Lakish says Kinyan Peiros is Lav Kekinyan Haguf. And the Gemara now says Tanoi, it's actually a machlokas Tanoim. This is specifically within Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara asked on the previous summon from a brisa that it seemed from the brisa that Kinyan Peiros is Lav Kekinyan Haguf. It seemed to support Reish Lakish, and so the Gemara is now saying that according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's actually a machlokas Tanoim. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Nechasai loch v'acharecha leploni. If a person says, I'm going to give my property to you, and then after you, it should go to so-and-so. And this was the same case mentioned on the previous summon. The simple understanding of the case is that the person is giving the property to the first individual. He's just giving a Kinyan Peiros. You can use the property, and then after you die, it's going to go to so-and-so. Then the actual property will go to another person, so it is a case of Kinyan Peiros. We did mention on the previous summon that according to Reish Lakish, anytime you say Nechasai loch v'acharecha leploni, it's possible that you're not simply giving the Peiros over to the first individual, but you're even giving the Guf HaKarka, you're giving the land itself over to the first individual. That's why according to Reish Lakish, this brisa will not pose a problem at all, because Reish Lakish can always say that it's simply a machlokis of whether you're only giving the Peiros over or the Guf HaKarka over to that first individual. But in any case, the case again is the person gives Nechasai loch, I'm giving my property to you, to the first individual, and after you die, it's going to go to so-and-so. And so we have a machlokas tanoim as follows: V'yorad rishon umachar v'yachal. Let's say the first person, he goes down and he sells the property or he eats from the property, and we'll see in the Gemara further on what exactly is he selling. Is he selling the land itself? Is he selling the Peiros? But it says Hasheni motzi miyad halakuchos. That second individual, he's able to take it away from the buyers. What was sold is not considered to be a good sale. Divrei Rebbe, those are the words of Rebbe, and the idea over here is that according to Rebbe, Kinyan Peiros is lav kekinyan haguf. The simple understanding of Rebbe is the person was given the Peiros, he was given the produce from the property, that first individual, but he was not given the Guf HaKarka, and therefore if he tries to sell the Guf HaKarka, we take that away. If we take that away from the buyer, and we give it to the second individual because it was promised, that would be saying that Kinyan Peiros is lav kekinyan haguf. That's why we're saying according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's actually a machlokas tanoim. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Ein l'sheni ela masha shaya rishon. The second individual can only get whatever the first person left off. And the simple understanding of this is that according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Kinyan Peiros is considered to be kekinyan haguf, and therefore, since it's like a kinyan haguf, that first person actually does own the actual property, and he can sell the property. And if he sells the property, the second person actually will lose out. And so therefore, Rabbi Yochanan will say that it's a machlokas tanoim whether Kinyan Peiros is kekinyan haguf or not kekinyan haguf. And again, according to Reish Lakish, it's not a problem at all, because you can simply say Kinyan Peiros is always lav kekinyan haguf. And Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, who seems to be saying that it's kekinyan haguf over here, he is saying that it's kekinyan haguf because, as we said on the previous Amud, when you say nechasai loch ve'acharecha leploni, that is different. In that situation, it could be you're actually giving the Guf HaKarka to the first individual. But the Gemara continues, Urimini, we have a contradiction from the following brisa. Nechasai loch ve'acharecha leploni, the same case, I'm giving my property to you, and then after you, it should go to so-and-so. Yored rishon umocher v'yochel divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says that the first person can go down, and he can sell, and he can eat from the property, and that sounds like, according to Rebbe, there is no problem whatsoever for the first person to sell the property. That contradicts what Rebbe said in the brisa above. Rebbe said in the brisa above that if the first person tries to sell the property, since we say Kinyan Peiros is lav kekinyan haguf, the second person can take it away from the buyers. It seems to be a contradiction in Rebbe. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Ein l'rishon ela achilas peiros bilvad. The first person is only allowed to consume the produce. Apparently, he's not allowed to sell the property, and that goes against what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said that the second person, he only gets whatever the first person left over, as if the first person is allowed to sell the property. And so the Gemara says, Kasha de Rebbe ad Rebbe, ud Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel ad Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. This is a contradiction within Rebbe, and it's a contradiction within Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. And the Gemara answers, "The Rebbe ad the Rebbe lo kasha." With it, as far as the contradiction within Rebbe, it's not difficult. Halagufa halapira. In one case, we're talking about the actual property, and in the other case, we're just talking about the produce of the property. So in the first brisa, where it says Hasheni motzi miyad halakuchos, that if the first person tries to sell the property, the second person can take it away from the buyers. That's where the first person is selling the actual property. That sale is no good. He can't sell the actual property because Kinyan Peiros is not kekinyan haguf according to Rebbe. But in the second brisa, where it says that the first person can sell, that simply means he can sell the produce. And the Gemara continues, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, lo kasha, also the contradiction within Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, that's also not difficult. In one case we're talking what a person should do lechatchila, in one case we're talking after the fact, meaning in the first brayso when it says ein l'sheni alamash shaya rishon, the first person shouldn't be selling the property, but if he does, b'di'evid, so then it's going to be effective, and the second person will only get whatever is left. And the second brayso is saying, ein l'rishon, when Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says ein l'rishon ela achilas peiros bilvad, it means lechatchila, the first person should only be consuming the produce. He shouldn't be selling the property because the intentions of the person who gave it to the first person, his intention was acharecha leploni, it should go to the second person. But b'di'evid, if that first person does sell the property, the sale will go through. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya, Abaya says, Ezehu Rasha Aram, what's considered to be a cunning, wicked person? Zehamasi Eitza Limchar ben Chasim. This would be someone who gives advice to sell the property. He tells that first recipient, sell the property. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, the sale would actually be good, but it's not proper, it's not appropriate to sell the property because you're supposed to just take the produce and leave over the property for the second individual. That's why it's a Rasha Aram. It's a cunning, wicked person because he's doing something that technically works, but he should not be doing it. As we said, lechatchila, that first person should not sell the property. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yochanan says, halacha k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel again, that if the first person sells the property, that sale will go through. The second person will only get what remains after the sale. And the Gemara continues, umoda, however, he admits, shim nisanan b'manas shchimera. Let's say that first person, meaning Rav Shimon ben Gamliel admits, let's say the first person, he doesn't sell the property, but he gives it as a matnas shchimera. When he's on his deathbed, he gives it away, so lo asa klum. So then, that's going to be nothing. And the Gemara explains why. My time, and what's the reason why that doesn't work? Amar Abaya says, matnas shchimera lo kana ela la'achar misa. When a person gives a gift on his deathbed, the kinyan actually takes place after his death. Uchvar kidmo acharecha. But again, the case over here was nechasai loch v'acharecha leploni. It goes to you first, and then after you it goes to so-and-so. And after you to so-and-so is actually im misa, at the time of the death, meaning right before the moment of death, it goes to the second person. And so therefore, kidmo acharecha, that second person, his kinyan actually comes before the matnas shchimera, because the matnas shchimera comes only after death. And that's why lo kana, that's why the matnas shchimera will not be effective if the first person tries to give it away in that fashion. But the Gemara continues, Umiyamar Abaya Hachi, does Abaya really say that? Itmar, but it was stated, matnas shchimera me'emos aikone. When it comes to a matnas shchimera, at what point in time does that kinyan take effect? Abaya Amar im Gemar Misa, Abaya says it's not after death, it's with the death, at the moment, right before the moment of death. V'Rava Amar li'achar Gemar Misa, and Rava is the one that says that it happens after death, and so therefore Abaya does not seem to say that the matnas shchimera takes place after death. And the Gemara says, Hadar be Abaya me'ahi. Abaya actually retracted from that, even though he initially said im Gemar Misa, but then he said no, actually the matnas shchimera takes place la'achar Misa, and that's why again, if the first person gives it away as a matnas shchimera, that will not be a good kinyan. And the Gemara says, how do you know that he retracted from im Gemar Misa? Maybe he retracted from what he said, that it's liachar Gemar Misa. How do you know which one he retracted from? And the Gemara says, Lo salka daitach, don't let it enter your mind. We already know which one he retracted from based on the Mishnah. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, Zagitech imamati, Zagitech mecholizeh, Zagitech la'achar Misa. If a person says, this is your get if I die, this is your get if I die from this illness, this is your get after death, Lo amar klum, so he has said nothing, because again, these are all languages where it takes place la'achar Misa. And the Rashbam explains, Lo salka daitach me'ahid la'achar Misa hadarbe. Don't think that he retracted from the idea that the matnas shchimera takes place after death. Because certainly when a shchimera gives something to others from his property, so he certainly does not mean that it should leave his possession until after he dies. Because we find the same thing when it comes to divorcing one's wife. When he's divorcing her and trying to make her mutter to others, he's not finished. He doesn't conclude doing the divorce when he phrases it in this fashion, so until after he actually dies. As we learned in the Mishnah, Amar im omus azi get. If he says if I die, it's a get. Zagitech mecholi zel la'achar gemar choli, meaning after the illness is finished. Dehainu la'achar misa, meaning after death. Zagitech la'achar misa lo amar klum. Again, if he says la'achar misa, it's nothing. The lo gamar legarshad la'achar misa, because again, the gerushin is only going to be concluded. The gerushin is only going to happen after death. Ve'in get li'achar misa. There's no get after death. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Zeira, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Zeira says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, meaning the halacha is that in the case of Nechasai Loch ve'acharecha leploni, if the first person sells the property, it is a good sale. Ve'afilu hayu behen avodim, even if part of the property they were slaves. V'otzion l'cheres, and so then he freed the slaves. That first person freed the slaves. That's still going to be effective. The Gemara says, Pshit, it's obvious. What's the difference between avodim and all other property? Of course, that's going to be effective, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. And the Gemara says, Ma'od detema, what might you have said? Motzi Amar le l'mi'avidi surah lo yahavin lach. Maybe he could say to him that I didn't give you the property in order to do an isser. It's usher to free slaves. And so therefore maybe specifically by avodim it wouldn't work. So Kamash Malon, that's what he's teaching us, that according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, if he would free the slaves, that would also be effective. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Yosef says that Rav Yochanan says, Halacha k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, that if the first person sells the property, it's a good sale. Ve'afilu asa and tachrichin l'meis. Even if the first person, he made them shrouds for a dead body, even that would be effective. The Gemara says, Pshit, isn't that obvious? Why should tachrichin be different than anything else? And the Gemara says, Ma'od detema, what might you have said? L'shavinu isure hana lo yahavi loch. I didn't give you the property that you should render it aser b'hana, that it's prohibited to get benefit from it. It's aser to get benefit from tachrichin l'meis. And the idea is that a person is not going to give away his property that it shouldn't be used. He wants people to get benefit from his property. So maybe you would say that if he makes a tachrichin l'meis, it would not be effective. And so Kamash Malon, so it's coming to teach us that even tachrichin l'meis, that will be effective. And the Gemara continues, Darash Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda taught, Esrog zen nosan lach b'matana. This esrog is given to you as a gift, the same basic case as before. V'acharecha leploni, after you die, it's going to go to so-and-so. Netalo rishon v'yotzabo. If the first person takes the esrog in order to be yotzei the mitzvah, to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav and esrog, banu l'machlokas Rebbe Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, that's going to be the same machlokas between Rebbe and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Again, Rebbe holds that kinyan peiros is lav ka kinyan haguf, and so therefore he will not be yotzei with that esrog, and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel will say kinyan peiros is ka kinyan haguf, and therefore he will be yotzei. But the Gemara continues, Maskif lo Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asked on this, Adkan lo pligi Rebbe Rav Shimon ben Gamliel hasam. The only machlokas between Rebbe and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel over there is as follows. Ela demar savar kinyan peiros ka kinyan haguf dami. One says that kinyan peiros is like kinyan haguf. Umar savar kinyan peiros lav ka kinyan haguf dami. The other one says that kinyan peiros is not ka kinyan haguf. Elohacha, but if you try to apply that over here, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Amid Beis.